What's up, Renegade Nation? Before we begin the video, I'd like to give a big shout out to our most recent Patreon supporters: Ross Lingard, Benjamin Brown Keeley, Aqua, Max Mayer, Goku, Nog Saren, West Double Zero, Amy Labossiere, Lieutenant Weeb, Daniel Fitzwilliam, Pablo Vidal, Sean, Scott Wright, Zach Thorpe, and as always, I'd like to thank our executive producer, The Anime Hybrid. Thank you all very much for your support, and if you want to support us on Patreon, feel free to click the link down below to find out more. We'll see you there. Happy Memorial Day, everybody. Welcome to a bit of a somber note of Renegades React. This is a video that I've been wanting to do for some time and has been requested a lot throughout the history of the channel. And I figured might as well save it for a Memorial Day, because this is a pretty heavy video. I've seen a bit of it.
How much does it weigh?
18 minutes and 30 seconds.
Oh, another solid joke.
Yes. But overall, man, I mean, these this video is something that I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to do for a long time, and I figured, hey, Memorial Day's here, might as well react to it with a military man, a former military man.
In comparison to this shit,
I mean,
nothing.
Well,
nothing. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm some kind of gold.
No.
I appreciate it, but I just want to go ahead and make it clear, just so that there's no misrepresentation whatsoever. I worked in a clinic, and I never went overseas. I never went into a combat zone. I did my service for my contract, and it was that. I didn't do anything exemplary or crazy or wild like these people did. And what we're doing now is a good thing, simply because this stuff doesn't seem real. You gotta come to the realization that this stuff actually happened. And I guess it's just like a lot of the footage being in black and white that we've seen and colorized film and stuff. It still looks cartoonish. This happened, man.
Mm-hmm.
And the world was completely changed by it. And a lot of people got jacked up, you know. I mean, it's stuff that we could never fathom.
No.
So coming to terms with the reality of it and appreciating the sacrifice that was made for, you can argue whether or not stuff was for the greater good in one way or the other, but these people thought that they were doing the right thing.
Yes.
And it really carved out reality for us.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is, dude, I mean, you know, though your service was limited and your service was in, as you said, in a clinic, and you never saw combat or anything like that.
No.
Still, I must say thank you for serving.
You know.
And if Jacob were here right now, I would thank him as well, because, you know, he was a Marine. He never, as far as I've heard him talk, he's never served in a combat area or anything like that. But still, those who take the effort and put forth the effort to serve this country in any way, I mean, I may disagree with this country on a lot of things, but I will never, ever, ever discredit the soldiers who...
Well, they're not making the decisions.
No, they're not.
You know, so...
And that's the point. You see, wars are fought by soldiers, but are preached by politicians.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And that's a whole thing that has, like, this right here.
Craziness.
Hitler himself, you know, if I say that and this video gets flagged, you'll know why. But Der Fuhrer himself was a megalomaniac, a sociopath, and outright one of the most horrendous human beings ever to exist on planet Earth. And the war that he started is single-handedly, by body count, the biggest conflict in human history. By the numbers alone.
Yeah, true piece of shit.
Yeah. And the thing is, he's not the worst offender of human rights during that war. Even though he's the centerpiece, everyone always overlooks the other one.
Well, he was the loudmouth of the bunch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of the others, like, I mean, you look at stuff even beyond Hitler, like fucking Mao and shit. Like
Stalin.
There's they weren't nearly as out in the public eye yelling and screaming and ranting about shit. I mean,
they weren't prolific.
Hitler was definitely bringing a light to what his situation was. And then his skeletons got drug out of his closet, and holy shit, the world was not ready for that.
No.
I know when I first came to grips with the idea of the Holocaust and shit, it was like, I mean, I'm still to this day trying to accept fully what happened, and I haven't yet.
The Holocaust Museum, I went there.
Been there twice.
Yeah,
still haven't. Still doesn't seem real to me.
Still horrendous.
When I saw the little fucking shoes, like the little fucking baby shoes and shit that they drug out the ovens and shit, man, like, it's just like, you just can't. I don't think I will ever be able to accept in my mind the full gravity of that situation, bro. Like, it's just it's horrific.
And the thing is, every generation that passes forgets about the true scale of World War II. And though the Holocaust was terrible, the Holocaust is one of the greatest atrocities in human history. The atrocities that were committed by governments against their own people. For instance, what happened in the Soviet Union.
Unbelievable. I mean, you want to get into American politics. I mean, the Japanese internment camps,
that's
bro.
Another thing
what
too.
And you don't just get taught that shit in school as a serious thing.
No.
It's like a cliff note, maybe. And, or at least it was for me, but then again, that's been several years back.
We were taught it. I mean,
they talked about it, but they didn't talk about it.
Well, I remember the pictures they showed. They showed the Japanese citizens, Japanese American citizens, you know, who were interned there, and they talked about how many, hundreds of thousands.
They didn't talk about their shops and
no, they didn't talk
all
about
that shit. Their
shit
getting all burnt down and everybody turning their backs on them.
And that's a horrible thing. That's a horrible thing that happened. And America, and as a matter of fact, there's a great movie called Nuremberg. Came out around, I believe, in the 90s or the early 2000s. It went over the Nuremberg trials, and I think it was
Rommel.
No, it was Goring. No. Nuremberg. No, Rommel was already dead by the time the Nuremberg trials happened.
Because I saw that
Nuremberg
movie.
committed as Nuremberg was.
Is that the one that was like the vice president, the equivalent of the vice president of Hitler?
Goring.
That was the one who brought. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Hess, Goring, Goebbels had killed himself. So did Hitler. Like a lot of the Nazi upper heads had committed suicide by the time the trial commenced.
Yeah,
but like Funk.
Finale was about one of them that had gotten away forever.
Yes. Yeah, that
was
one,
a great movie.
I think Skorzynski and gosh, I forget the other one who got away. That they both died living on beaches in South America.
Yeah,
like of old age.
It's like listing off the names of like venereal diseases.
Kind of.
Fuck them Himmler, I'm sorry.
Himmler's mumps.
You can say what you want to. These people were trash, and they were smart trash too, which makes it so. They were so calculating in the shitty things that they were doing. It's just like, man, they really had to think about this stuff a lot, and fuck them for doing that.
Well,
man.
And the thing is, when you watch the Nuremberg movie and they actually show you the transcripts of what these people said while they were testifying on the stand. For instance, there was a conversation that went on between Goring and it was Goring. Goring and one of the lawyers who was interrogating him. They actually had a conversation in the prison yard, and Goring told him, he said, "What is the difference between your anti-Semitic laws and the Jim Crow laws in your country? What is the difference? What is the difference between the internment camps that you put your Japanese citizens into and the internment camps that we had? The only reason that we did what we did was because it was the final solution and we had no choice." And it's like, that's where you're wrong. You did have a choice. You did have a choice to take all the land, all the gold, and everything away from them. Now, the Japanese Americans that got interned here in the United States, once they returned to civilian life, I mean, for the lack of a better part, they weren't executed. They weren't destroyed.
It's still crazy, though, to be like, well, once we release them from unjust prison. I know what you're saying, but it's still like, it's just, everybody was doing, it was crazy. Like I said earlier, this shaped the world. There was crazy shit going on. The gravity of it, we can't grapple with that shit.
Yes.
You know, we've never experienced this coronavirus shit has been unbelievable because we've never had anything like this to deal with, bro. This stuff was happening like every 10 or 15 years back from like the 20s to the 40s to 50s of just crazy world-changing shit that we're lucky to be here, man.
Yeah, we are. As human beings.
We're lucky to be here.
Yeah, we are lucky.
As bad as things can get.
But
we are standing on the shoulders and the stubborn, sometimes will of humanity to just trudge on through a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, what's been built and what we have is tremendous compared to where we were 100 years ago.
Oh, my God.
And now here we are with The Fallen of World War II by Neil Halloran. So let's have a watch.
The average lifespan of an American is 80 years. And an 80-year-old today was 10 when World War II ended, 4 when it began. A soldier who saw battle would have to be in his late 80s, at least today. Generals, political leaders, the decision makers of the war, few are still with us. And over the past few decades, we've seen authors...
Oh, something's wrong. It's skipping really bad. Don't know why it's doing that. Hold on.
...and filmmakers rush to capture stories from survivors before this connection of memory is lost.
Yeah, it's doing something weird. Don't know why it's doing that.
You just started over.
This project is not about individual war stories.
Okay, it
it's
looks
not
like
about
it stopped.
survivors. We're going to tally up the tens of millions of people whose lives were cut short by the war, and see how these numbers stack up to other wars in history, including trends in recent conflicts. We'll be counting soldiers and civilians separately. Each of these figures represents 1,000 people who died. Civilians were of all walks of life, whereas military deaths were almost entirely men. The average age was about 23. In most battles, for every 1,000 soldiers killed, there are more than 1,000 who are injured. The word casualty can be confusing because in military speak, it often includes both deaths and injuries, and anything else that takes a soldier out of service. Here, we're just counting the deaths, and we'll begin with American soldiers. Over 400,000 died. Most of the deaths occurred in the European theater, fighting the Nazis. And about a quarter were in the Pacific, fighting the Japanese. When you put them on the timeline,
D-Day.
You see that casualties were the heaviest at the end of the war. The war began on September 1st, 1939. But the US wasn't willing to join the fight until Pearl Harbor, 2 years in.
The spike in deaths.
The deaths increased drastically on D-Day, when the Allies invaded Normandy.
Yep.
One of the most tragic moments of the war was on D-Day at Omaha Beach, where 2,500 Americans fell. So about the same number of US soldiers died on this single beach landing as the entire 13 years of the recent war in Afghanistan. The bloodiest battle in the Pacific was Okinawa, which lasted 82 days, during which 12,500 Americans died. About 5,000 of these deaths were at sea from kamikaze attacks. Now let's look at some other countries, starting with Europe. Germany started World War II when it invaded Poland. Poland ultimately lost 200,000 soldiers in the war. Most died after the invasion while the country was occupied by Germany and the Soviet Union. Germany, meanwhile, lost just 16,000 in the invasion of Poland. The Nazis went on to invade and conquer other countries, including Denmark, Belgium, the Netherlands, France, Greece, and Yugoslavia. France surrendered, but after losing 92,000 soldiers in the Battle of France. Over 200,000 ultimately fell, which includes deaths in POW camps, French colonies, and other fighting. Yugoslavia suffered almost 500,000 military deaths. The initial invasion brought relatively few casualties on both sides, but the deaths mounted under Nazi occupation due to guerrilla fighting, civil conflict, and mass executions. The Nazi invasions were swift, with relatively few German losses. Even the Nazi commanders expressed surprise at their success. And then we have the United Kingdom and the United States, who were not invaded but took the fight to the Nazis. Britain lost about the same number of soldiers as the US, which includes the British colonies. Germany lost about 500,000 soldiers fighting the US and Britain in what is known as the Western Front, which took place in France and Belgium. But most Nazi soldiers died in the Eastern Front, Germany's unsuccessful invasion of the Soviet Union. The numbers are staggering. The most famous battle of the Eastern Front, and perhaps the turning point of the European war, was Stalingrad. The German Sixth Army successfully took Stalingrad, but then got surrounded by the Soviets and cut off from food and ammunition. 500,000 Nazis would ultimately die in Stalingrad. Another 100,000 were taken prisoner, of which 6,000 would ever return. POWs had a low survival rate throughout World War II, and it was particularly grim in the East. When you include these POWs, roughly the same number of Germans died in Stalingrad as all the Western Front fighting against France, the UK, and the US. And though Stalingrad was a victory for the Soviets, they suffered almost twice as many losses as Germany. The Soviet Union would eventually defeat the once unstoppable German army, killing 2.3 million Nazi soldiers.
But at a cost of nearly 7-1.
But winning the war came at a cost.
Russian, Soviet high command, dude, gave no shits about their soldiers. None. To them, they were a cog in the wheel of the great Soviet machine. And that's it. Your job is to die.
I mean, this almost looks like a fucking joke. You know what I mean?
It
it's
does.
Unbelievable, dude. How do you wrap your head around this shit?
It's inconceivable.
8.7 million is the official tally by the Russian military, a hotly disputed number.
Yeah.
Some studies have calculated as many as 14 million dead.
That's what I was told. 14
To complete
million.
the count of European military deaths, we need to add German deaths from other fronts, including the North and Africa,
Yeah.
as well as deaths from other
and-
Axis powers allied with the Nazis, Hungary, Romania, and Italy. When you put these European military deaths on the timeline, it looks like this.
Jesus.
You can now interact with the chart to learn more. Pause the narration if you would like more time.
My God, dude.
And now we switch to civilian deaths in Europe.
Oh, God. Star of David.
6 million Jewish people were killed in the Holocaust. If you separate this by country, you see that about half, 2.7 million, were Polish. 700,000 were Soviets, followed by Hungary and 17 other countries. Broken down another way, about half of the 6 million were killed in the concentration camps.
Auschwitz and Treblinka.
Over 1 million died in Auschwitz. Most were killed in the gas chambers. Others died from starvation, exhaustion, disease, and other forms of execution. The second most deadly camp was Treblinka, which was exclusively an extermination camp, set up to look like a train station. Mobile killing groups killed 1.4 million Jews.
Jesus.
Like with the gas chambers,
This
men
is
were
the shit
killed
that I
first
just...
to reduce the
I
risk
mean,
of revolt.
how do you fucking comprehend this shit, dude?
Cold, Emotionless monsters, dude.
I can't. I just. It's unbelievable, dude.
All walks of life.
The Holocaust also includes non-Jewish deaths. Between 130,000 to 500,000
Romani,
then called gypsies, were killed. The numbers are disputed.
Handicapped,
About 250,000 people with disabilities were killed. Homosexuals, Catholics, and other groups were also exterminated, but their numbers were relatively small. Some historians say that other civilian deaths should go under the label of Holocaust. About 2 million non-Jewish Poles were killed under German occupation.
Yeah, just for being
Some of
Polish.
which were sent to the gas chambers at Auschwitz.
Just for being Polish.
When you combine civilian and military deaths, over 16% of the total Polish population died in World War II, which is the highest percentage of any country. But not the highest in total death count.
No.
The Soviet Union again tops that list, losing at least as many civilians as it did soldiers, somewhere between 10 and 20 million. A particularly dark moment for the Soviet Union was the siege of Leningrad, now St. Petersburg. German forces surrounded Leningrad before civilians could be evacuated. Supplies, including food, were cut off for 2.5 years.
Oh my God.
Negligence, like I told you, dude. The Soviets
1.5
did
million
not
people
care.
died as a result.
Was
Mostly
that like
from
in the
starvation.
Ukraine and shit? The bread basket?
No, that
Where was it? Because I know that they
No,
starved out a bunch of people.
Well, yeah, Leningrad was in the north, is in the more north near Finland, and then
I don't know
well,
geography as
okay.
far as Russia's concerned.
Okay, well,
Like, I don't know their
so
geography.
so Leningrad is to the north, Moscow's in the middle, Stalingrad is in the south.
Okay.
That's basically it. The Leningrad was the worst because it was farther north and thus got colder a lot faster, and thus whenever the Soviets cut off supplies to the city, they did it to not only starve out the Nazis, but they also starved out
Sacrificed their own people.
Sacrificed more than 1.5 million of their own people just to starve out and kill. I think it was the Nazi Wehrmacht division, like the 3rd or 4th division, and they starved them out and they killed 200,000 Nazis, but at the cost of 1.5 million of their own countrymen.
Ruthless.
The Russians, dude. I mean,
And the Germans.
Germans and the Russians. I mean, when they go to war, dude, they don't play around. I mean, that's the thing about them. They don't mess about.
Mostly civilians. Stalin's cruelty towards his own people is partly responsible for these numbers.
Yes.
He often didn't allow civilians to evacuate from cities, thinking it would cause the soldiers protecting them to fight harder. About 1 million Soviets died in Stalin's own labor camps, called the Gulag.
And that's another thing, too.
Just about every
The
country
labor camps
suffered
to
civilian
supply
losses,
the Russian army.
especially countries who were invaded. While many died as a result of so-called collateral damage, the biggest numbers occurred when it was no accident. Civilians were exterminated, purposely fired upon or bombed,
Yes.
used as human shields, or intentionally deprived of food. The intentional killing of civilians was done by most warring parties, including the United Kingdom and the United States. The United Kingdom was spared of a land invasion, but still lost 60,000 civilians, largely from German air raids or blitzes, often directed at civilian population centers. The UK did the same to German cities at a much greater magnitude, causing about 10 times the number of deaths. But most German civilian deaths came from the ground at the late stage of the war. When the Nazi regime collapsed, civilians living in occupied regions had to desperately flee from the advancing Soviet army. Rapes were widespread, and death estimates ranged from 600,000 to 3 million. Let's step back and see where we are with the totals. We just counted about 20 million civilian deaths in Europe. If you add this to the European military deaths we already covered, it brings us to over 40 million. Then we have the Asian theater. Here we see the vast majority of military deaths in Asia came from China and Japan. On the civilian side, about 6 million deaths from China, Indonesia, Korea, Indochina, and the Philippines can be attributed to Japanese war crimes, which are sometimes compared to the Nazi atrocities due to the sheer scale of the cruelty.
Nanking
China
alone.
had the second highest death count after the Soviet Union. And like the Soviets, the Chinese government demonstrated a stunning willingness to sacrifice its own people.
Yeah, they flooded the Yellow River.
Chinese
I remember
nationalists
that.
opened the dike at the Yellow River, hoping the flood would halt the Japanese advance. 500,000 Chinese civilians or more were killed, which is 2 or 3 times the number who died in all countries in the 2004 Asian tsunamis.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
To think that their own government would open up the dikes and flood the Yellow River and murder 500,000 of their own countrymen.
Just because we
Just-
need to
just
do
to
something
stop-
to
just
slow down
to-
the Japanese.
Yeah, in which it didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't. It was futile.
Imagine that.
Yeah, because the Japanese came up through Manchuria. Because they'd already secured a foothold in Korea. Actually, that's why Korea exists, is because the Japanese conquered it, and thus, whenever they went into Manchuria, they went south, and then they went into, Shanghai, Nanking, Beijing, and oh god, dude.
But the invasion of China only cost Japan 200,000 soldiers. Most were killed fighting the US and allies in the Pacific War. A significant portion of Japanese civilian deaths were caused by American firebombing and the 2 nuclear attacks. Contrary to official US statements, these
They
airstrikes
did.
were directed at civilian populations, not
they
military
aimed them.
targets.
Yeah, they actually.
When you add
did.
all the deaths outside Europe,
Unbelievable.
it brings us to a grand total of 70 million for the war, give or take depending on who's counting and what civilian deaths get included. More people died in World War II than in any other war in history. For comparison, here are 20 or so of the very worst wars and atrocities we have on record.
Look at that. Look at Mao, by himself, responsible for 40
Oh,
million.
yeah. That's
Stalin, 20
unbelievable.
million. World War I, 15 million, dwarfed by World War II. And then, of course, the Russian Civil War, Chinese Civil War.
But still, the 40 million from Mao,
Yes.
dude, so underplayed. I
one talks
mean,
about
really, in high school, we didn't get that full
No.
breakdown. And say what you want to, man. People can be like, oh, I'm not saying anything about the people of China
No.
or Chinese people.
No.
But the Chinese government is absolutely despicable. They've gotten away with some of the worst stuff that's happened since World War II. They've been able to just slide under the radar. People still want to do business with them
Brush
like
under the
crazy,
rug,
brush
like
under the
nothing
rug.
No one cares.
Has my government done some really
Absolutely.
unbelievable shit that
Our
I don't
government's
agree
done
with?
terrible things.
We do not. We are nowhere near
But
what the Chinese government
The-
has done.
And here's one thing.
Nowhere
A
near
great
it.
quote from JFK: "America's not perfect, but we've never had to threaten our population with violence to keep them in."
Yeah,
That's all I
mean,
gotta say.
I just feel like that situation does not get brought up enough.
No, I mean, look at that. dude.
40 million people, really?
Yeah. And this happened right after World War II.
And that being the giant leap forward, right?
Oh, the Great Leap Forward.
Or the Great Leap Forward,
Yeah,
yeah.
that
Those
made
40 million lives, that great leap.
Yeah, that supposedly was supposed to bring China into the modern era.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we were leaving all of our previous predilections behind, and we were going to have this great leap forward and be a true like world juggernaut on the world economy. Yeah, at the cost of 40 million people.
Yeah.
And then, of course, yeah.
Some of these are more of atrocities than wars. But we've
Yeah.
seen how that distinction can get blurry.
Follow the Ming Dynasty.
Some of these stand across centuries.
This one here is not such an atrocity because here's the thing. Don't get me wrong. The American government and like the conquistadors and all of the other people throughout history who slaughtered the native tribes here in the United States, there was one thing that actually decided the flow of those battles and those wars before a gunshot was even fired. And you know what that was?
Sickness.
Exactly. More than 90% of the Native Americans in the New World died from exposure to Old World plagues.
And they also, then the ones that survived died out because of absolute barbaric behavior from people who called themselves civilized.
Yeah,
so
the conquistadors.
if they hadn't, I will go at odds with you on that one, because had those people survived the death from a disease, they would have probably been killed by how inhumanely they were treated.
Oh, absolutely. I don't.
I mean,
doubt
it
that
was
for a
either
second.
Fuck my life this way or fuck my life this way just because you people showed up. So I don't know, man. That 20 million, whether it was from disease or not, they would have been killed anyway.
Well, I don't doubt
awful.
that. I don't doubt that a lot of people would have died. I don't know if a full 20 million. I think more natives would have been around if they would have had some resistance.
I would say they would have been having more kids, and then the number would be higher.
Yes,
because they forced starving people to walk across the fucking country.
Oh, man. Yeah, the Trail of Tears.
I mean, that's
I remember hearing. I remember
shit like that. I mean, people are going to drop regardless of how many there are.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's just
so it would have probably been worse.
Yeah, and Andrew Jackson deserves to burn in hell for subjecting the native populations to that.
I mean, all of that shit is just like. That's why nationalism to me is an absolute stupid idea. All right, we can be proud of who we are and our contributions and shit, and like trying to make the world a better place in our own individual lives and as groups, But when you get to a national level, bro, like I cannot bear the shame and fucking horrific guilt of shit like that.
Well, the thing is, that's not your guilt to bear.
Right, because I refuse to be some nationalist stooge. I won't be.
And here's the thing. As an American, I own up to the fact that our nation has done great atrocities to this world that has shaped the world in a much worse favor. We're the ones who destabilized the Middle East when we installed the Shah of Iran. We're the ones who allowed all of these South American dictators to take over to stop the spread of communism. We're the ones that allowed all of the atrocities to occur in Vietnam that turned the population against us, and that's why we lost the Vietnam conflict. And then, of course, there's all the stuff that's been subjected to the American citizens, whether you believe they're legal or not. The Native Americans, the former slaves who became who are not, who are African Americans now. I mean, and their descendants. Everything throughout history that has happened has been an atrocious thing. But the thing is, I've always believed this: if you dwell on the past too long, you are doomed to repeat it, and you'll never grow as a human being if you do nothing but dwell on the past. That's why when I see these terrible things, the Atlantic slave trade, the American, what happened to the American Indians, everything that happened is just, to me, I see it as humanity being humanity, and thankfully, as time has marched forward, we have gotten a lot better. We've become more compassionate when it comes to the treatment of human life in some ways. But don't get me wrong, there's still room for improvement. There's always room for improvement.
And there's also the risk of backsliding on the situation with blind nationalism. If you do anything to sugarcoat the situations, then you're also doing a disservice to the fact that if you don't stare that shit in the face and accept it for what it is, it can happen again.
Yes.
Well,
any kind of nationalism.
I'm sure people were making the excuse of, manifest destiny. That's something I should believe in, and so I have a right to kill these people and shit like that. When it came to the Native Americans, it's where do you draw the line on separating yourself from the we did this and we did that? That's why for me, it's hard for me to look at the mythology of American culture and American society, and I look at it for what it really is, man. It's a company. Our government's a company, and there's their logo. They've got their flag, and you be a part of the team, and you contribute to the company that does all the shit a company does, except this company also is allowed to judge the morality of when it's okay to kill people. And a lot of times that's where I draw the line with it, where I'm a customer of this company that provides a bunch of services to me, and it does every citizen because we're their tax revenue, right? We're a customer for them in that way. But I'm not going to go to bat for the bullshit that I don't have any part of, man.
No, me neither.
And
I shouldn't be blamed for the shit either.
Well, we have no control over it.
None.
It's when we're talking about stuff like this and the topic of, well, when we did this and when we did that, I do it too. It's just something that you learn to do for some reason. Everybody does it for the most part.
Well,
but I try to step back and be like, well, we didn't do shit.
Well, I take accountability for me being an American and understanding and addressing the atrocities that have happened in the past because
I will never put we to any of that shit.
But the thing is, I accept that as an American, but as an individual, me. There's the difference between the we and the me. And the me is not the we. We is a metaphorical term, is in the metaphorical sense means me understanding as an American, my country's done terrible things, but me as an individual has no fucking responsibility for it and should not be held up to that same standard.
I mean, even in the military, I was a non-combatant. You know, like I was, you know, I had a cross on my, you know, information because even in that situation of signing up for the military, I was not really interested in being the guy who was involved in, you know, an action that I could, you know, never live with, because I knew from past experience that I didn't agree with a lot of stuff. But the cool thing about my job was I was pretty much sworn to treat everybody.
Yes.
If I came upon somebody who needed help, no matter what situation I was put in, I had to treat them, or it was a war crime.
Well, yeah, and have you ever seen the movie Hacksaw Ridge?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Desmond Doss, when he, you know,
well, I know of it, yeah.
Well, Desmond Doss is hands down one of, like, he was a pacifist. He ran onto the battlefield without a weapon as a combat medic and saved so many people's lives. And not only that, but there was a Japanese soldier that, well, this is something that Desmond Doss himself said, but there was a Japanese soldier who was injured, and Desmond treated him.
Yeah,
he had an injury on his shoulder, and Desmond gave him combat gauze and put it on there and told him to hold it, and just like told it, just was like hold it tight. And then, and as far as Desmond knew, he helped that man in some way. I mean, the thing is, you try your hardest to help people throughout you try your hardest to help people. And whenever you're in combat situations like that. But I mean, not everybody is,
though.
No.
You know, obviously,
no,
that's a very specific and singular situation. That's why that man's actions, in my opinion, don't fall into the we category in a lot of things. You know, because, the majority is usually malicious.
Yes.
And awful. Because it takes a lot of people to sign on for this kind of shit to happen.
Yes.
A lot of people have to be willing to go down that road.
Yes.
And that's why I'm not part of that fucking we under any banner, flag, or creed, whatever. And so I'm in, like, I don't know if this is like some kind of thing wrong with me, but like, I just can't bring myself to a point where I'm okay with just signing on to some kind of large cult-like mentality when it comes to the country that I live in. I see the benefits of it. I am blessed beyond my wildest dreams, and I don't deserve any of the stuff that I have. This place has been amazing to me in a lot of ways, but it is hard for me to ignore the facts, if that makes any kind of sense, because it's very alluring to be able to look at, you know, my country and nationalism as this big, beautiful, cult-like, religious-like situation. I mean, how comfortable would it be to believe in that flaming winged bald eagle blaring Leonard Skinner swiping out all evil from the world and just making everything right and everything's great and everybody's free and everything's prosperous and wonderful? Like, it's just not that, man.
Well, in truth, for the whole thing about freedom, the whole ideal of freedom is a concept that we have in this country. And we have a pretty set idea on what we think freedom is. There's some people out there who see our freedom and see it as not just a sin, but they see it as something that is. And the thing is, this isn't something that's necessarily wrong. It's conflicting ideologies, and that's the thing about wars. wars have always been conflicting most of the time have been conflicting ideologies that always result in both sides believing that they're right until one side admits defeat, but at the cost of X amount of individuals in conflict. And that's always how it has been throughout history. And thankfully, we have not had as many like terrible conflicts that have resulted in these kinds of numbers anymore, because now with the world being as connected as ever, we're able to talk with each other more easily. Now, albeit, don't get me wrong, the unmitigated benefits of the internet has also given birth to Twitter and some of the absolute insanity that's on there. But I still think that the benefit of the internet has given rise to pretty much like a second era of enlightenment in some ways.
The people who give you the jerseys for these teams that are involved in this kind of shit will make you a number on a statistic like this and never know your name and not give a shit.
Never.
That's what I'm trying to say.
No, I get that.
Well, like kind of the way that I feel about it is you will be sacrificed and they won't even know that you're being sacrificed. It's just signing off on shit where people will end your life and not even ever know your name or anything close to it.
No.
You just become a little bitty blip on that radar that is huge and massive.
Yeah.
I just, how can you know? How can you be wise to this kind of shit and then be like, "Hoorah for my team"? You know what I mean? Just
well, it's just again, dude.
You know, and I understand. Like, I know there's people that are super proud of it, and people who have sacrificed so much in what they want to be like the good thing and the right thing. And I mean, it's just like a really tough situation for me to grapple with mentally because, man, they don't give a shit about you, man. At the end of the day, they really don't give a shit about you, bro.
Well, the government doesn't.
No.
Which is why instead of me dedicating my life towards, something government based or anything like that, I just wanted to have fun with my friends and just,
and I feel
do this
for the veterans, man, who have lost so much and in the name of just doing the best that they can to make the world a better place.
Yes.
That's what they tell you. That's what you're told.
Trying to make the world a better place.
That's what you're told,
yeah.
Literally. A force for good, man. A force for good. That's what you sign up for. And the crazy thing is, every single team says that.
Yes.
All of them. The people who are joining these extremist groups, their leaders are telling them this is the right thing. They were going to bring good shit is going to come out of this. Go kill those people.
Yeah. And the thing is, thankfully, though, groups like that are on the decline, sharp decline. And hopefully, I don't think they're ever going to die, but I think eventually they're just going to be nothing but a bunch of squawking heads, on the internet yelling shit at people.
Well, it'd be interesting to see, which it'll never happen, but how interesting would it be to have this big, massive, powerful entity, whatever, country, group, whatever, that has its people, and they're all fired up, and they're like, then we're going to go take these people out, and then everybody involved is just like, no, we're not.
Yeah. It's propaganda, dude.
But it never works that way, man. It never works that way. All the people.
Well, not anymore. Well. It used to work that. It used to be the way that it's like that now. When people are just like, all right, dude, anytime someone sniffs a war nowadays, everyone's just like, whoa, let's pull back the W word a little bit there, and versus back in the day, dude. War used to be seen as like this great honorable thing.
Oh yeah, where it's like I'm going to go bring honor to my family.
12 years old would sign up to go into World War I.
Well, I guess you're right on that. Well, I'm not going to guess. It seems like you're right on that. But like, I feel like there are so many situations though here recently that have come up that war could have happened to where there wasn't enough hate between the two sides to really make people up in arms. If it were the right country, it would have happened.
Yeah, and again, but here's the thing. all these country like us and the well, back in World War II, us and the Nazis had certain advantages on us technologically, but yet we still came over in the Western theater and we pretty much ran through them. Now, don't get me wrong, the Eastern Front ate up a lot of the resources that the Nazis had, but at the same time, the Russians lost well over 20 million of their own people, both civilians and soldiers.
Just lambs to the slaughter, man.
Yeah, just throwing them in there. No concern. And the thing is, I'll say this much about our government. It is absolutely not perfect, and it never has been. And it's written in the Constitution, like at the very beginning, to form a more perfect government. And do I think we'll ever be perfect? No, never. Because we're human beings. Human beings make mistakes. We have agendas. We have
It's
all
a tool for us,
bullshit.
though. It's supposed to be a tool for the citizens to operate.
But we're not
And
allowed
they
to.
work for us, right? That's the way it's supposed to be. But really, it's become
that's
this
not how it
mythological entity that gets worshipped and gets treated as if that's where we need to look when shit goes south, instead of looking at our neighbors and being like, we got to take care of this.
Yeah.
I got your back.
It's
you
like
know?
it's like, hey man, you know how to farm? It's like, okay. So tell you what, let's grow crops out in our backyard, and that way we can be completely dependent on ourselves and not have to depend on
How
everyone.
easily we forget, man. Vietnam, where this same entity looked at an entire generation of young men and said, you do not have a choice in this. Go fight these people who are literally doing nothing to harm you.
A faceless enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now
It-
that's
out of
the
containment.
kind of stuff that I can't forget.
I
that
can't
they
either.
did that.
I can't either, which is why
Because
they
there
got rid
was
of the draft.
even a false flag attack to start the war, to get our involvement in it. It was
Yeah.
proven to never happen. They got the call in that was a, what was it, the Tonkin incident?
The Gulf of Tonkin, yeah.
Yeah, where they called in that attack, and then they were like, oh, wait a minute, that was a false flag. It didn't actually happen. Take that back. And they were like, no, we're just going to run with it.
Yeah.
What the fuck, dude? And then I'm supposed to just be like, everything is great.
No.
No. Apologize publicly for that. You know? Let's build back some damn trust in a situation where I'm supposed... That's a lot of the problem that's going on right now. People don't know what to believe or to trust about anything. And then the people who want to drink the Kool-Aid in a chugging competition go around calling everybody else jackasses when there's reason for skepticism on everything.
Well, of course. I mean, it's good to be skeptical about things that you're uncertain of.
When you have previous
there's
examples
proof.
that
Yeah.
are huge, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, dude, our government's lied to us. I mean, hell, our government used to say artificial sweeteners were safe,
yeah,
and yet they cause more cancer than anything else.
yeah. Which I'm also drinking something that's got that in it, but
But again, dude, the thing is, like,
Who knows,
our
man?
government has lied to us and everything like that. But overall, I will say this: we're blessed to live in this country as jaggedly, like, just distorted as it can be. I am still thankful for the fact that I have what I have.
dude, I'm blessed.
Yeah.
I'm blessed in so many ways, but it's like being the I don't know, being the son of like an oil baron who massacres people or something. Like, I don't have any part in it, and
Well-
I'm definitely reaping the benefits of it, like, tremendously. Am I just going to hop my ass in a car and drive to Canada or somewhere else and just be like, hey, let me out of this relationship? No.
No.
I mean, this is where I was born. This is where my
You
family
might-
is.
Well, and
You
at
know,
this
but-
point, I came to that conclusion a long time ago, dude. And I came to this agreement with myself. Own it, and just be you.
That's what I do. I am me.
Yeah.
This is where I ended up, not who I am.
Yes.
You know, and I'm not apologetic about it
Nope.
because I had
Never
nothing to
should
do
be.
with it.
Should never
And
apologize.
All I can do is say, you know, let's live right now and do the best that we can to make sure we never forget this shit.
Ever.
And the people who are okay with that shit and still go about practices that could end up like this, do not let them do it.
No. Absolutely
and
not.
hold them accountable for thinking that shit like that's okay and that this is not something that should be seen as a disgrace and embarrassment
Yes.
and a tragedy.
All right, we're nearing the end of this. Let's
Yeah.
finish this up because time we
World
finish
War
this video
II
is
had
probably
a
going to
high
be an hour
slaughter
long.
count, and it all happened in just 6
Okay.
years.
Oh, that's another one too. The Mongol conquest. Look at that. 40 million people in the 11th century. The Lushan revolt.
Crazy.
That was a Chinese revolt. I mean, dude, there's been some
Crazy.
like absolutely nuts shit that's
The
happened.
world's
in the past.
population has grown significantly since the earliest atrocities on this list. If you want to compare them in terms of what percentage of the world died, we can adjust the chart to look like this. This rough approximation tells us there may have been more devastating wars before World War II, proportionally speaking.
Mongol conquest, dude. Everyone jokes about the Mongols.
I'm not trying to, unless it's John Wayne as Genghis Khan.
Genghis John.
When we turn to post-war
John Genghis Khan.
conflicts,
John Wayne.
it's hard to say anything that isn't
Never forget
controversial.
that.
But the data shows something quite extraordinary has been happening. In 1989, John Gaddis coined the phrase the long peace to identify the absence of conflict between the nuclear powers during the Cold War. 25 years later, the Cold War is over, and the term is still being used, although its meaning may have shifted. European countries have not fought each other, except for this 10-day war in 1956 when the Soviet Union invaded Hungary. When we look at European wars before World War II, it looks like this.
There were a
They
lot.
tend to be more frequent as you go back, though smaller in scale. And the largest 44 economies of the world have not battled each other since World War II. Rich countries have fought poorer countries, like the US versus Iraq, but rich countries have not fought other rich countries. Such a period of peace between the so-called great powers hasn't been seen since the Roman Empire. To many, peace is too strong of a word. Wars have occurred since World War II, and they can be grouped into these 4 categories. We don't see colonial wars anymore. We've already noted that interstate wars between rich countries have not occurred at all, and here we see wars involving smaller economies have tapered off. That leaves civil wars of 2 types, with and without farm intervention. And this is what these battle deaths look like alongside of World War II. More people died fighting in World War II than in all the wars since. And again, we can't forget about world population, which has almost tripled since World War II. If we scale these numbers to show deaths in proportion to world population, showing the likelihood that a person on Earth dies in battle, the downward trend becomes even more pronounced. Now, this isn't to infer anything about why this trend is occurring. That's a discussion for another day. You can now interact with this chart to explore what conflicts are behind the totals. Now, bear in mind we're just looking at battle deaths here, not civilian deaths, but those too are in decline. Peace is a difficult thing to measure. It's a bit like counting the people who didn't die in wars that never happened. We give such importance to the word peace, but we don't tend to notice it when it occurs, or report on it. Sometimes it takes reminding ourselves of how terrible war once was to see the peace that has been growing around us. Of course, this trend may not continue, and it's not clear how looking at these charts can help us make the right decisions to ensure that it does. But the longer the long peace grows, the more significant it becomes. So if watching the news doesn't make us feel hopeful about where things are heading, watching the numbers might.
He's right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't watch the news anymore, dude.
No, I don't. I haven't watched cable in years.
The truth is, with all the like agenda-based stuff that you see all over stuff, it's difficult to even.
Dude, they've made a virus political.
Yes.
What? What is there to even argue
Oh my god.
about?
Oh, dude, I saw something yesterday that absolutely just it tore me up because it made me realize just how media can warp things to try to be in their favor, no matter how far outside of the ballpark it is. For instance, you heard about that Hana Kimura, right? Hana Kimura was a Joshi professional wrestler.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw what you're talking about.
There was someone who wrote a story on one of these ultra left-leaning websites saying how this is a perfect example of how misogynistic the world still is and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, you motherfuckers are the reason why she did that. You are the reason why. Like, because the reason why she did what she did was because she kept getting all these people, you know, everybody. It wasn't just men, it was women too. They were relentlessly going after her because on this one reality show, she slapped a guy who washed her tights that she had that were very special to her and ruined them, and was not apologetic about it. Was just like, well, are you being such a bitch about it? And she slapped him. And then all of a sudden she kept getting bullied and bullied and bullied, and then she took her own life.
But what was the big deal about her slapping him for fucking her shit up?
Because he was an asshole about it. And the whole everybody took his, like, a lot of people took his side, kept telling her, you know, she was a bitch, she just needed to just, like, you know, never wrestle again, this and that. And she actually was, and she was on her way up, dude. 22 years old.
Oh, yeah, I saw she was young and had posted pictures of where she had cut herself up and shit.
Yes.
And, like, I mean, there's a lot of demons going on with that. That, to me, I'm not one to judge, but I don't think that's just cyberbullying. I think that there are other things going on that made the levees break finally.
Well, I know what I'm saying? Mental health's a big thing.
So,
but the amount of bullying and the amount of shit that came her way was unmerited. Because she slapped a dude because the dude was unapologetic.
Yeah, I would have slapped him too.
I would have too.
I've slapped people.
I have too.
You know, sometimes you gotta lay down a little pimp juice on them. I mean, but really, at the end of the day, you know, you don't know what's going on with somebody else.
Exactly.
So,
but
her being vulnerable and him doing that to her could have been the real trauma there. And it was just a response from that. There's so many ways you can look at things. And the real situation is the end result of everything is this lady killed herself, man.
But here's what I was getting at with the whole thing. They're trying to take her death, which we don't know the full terms of and the full spectrum of and everything. I mean, they're saying it's cyberbullying. All the evidence I've seen equates it to her personal mental health plus the bullying aspect, which is what added to the outcome of the situation. But there are people who are sharing this. There are people who are online trying to spin this story and the agenda of this story to fit a narrative they want to.
Always, dude.
I know, and it's annoying. It's beyond annoying. People like that are the reason why people are the reason why she did what she did. Like, they're like completely missing the point of what's going on, and this girl was probably begging for help and never got it. All because people don't really care. Like, these people, you know, these media companies who you think, oh, they write for me because, you know, oh, they made a quirky joke about this one show or this one thing that I like. Oh, therefore they're on my side. No, they're not. Much like the government, they are not on your side. They are there to sell papers, and they are there to just manipulate facts and everything in the way that just makes everything better for them.
When you're an entertainment figure or any kind of figure that's put yourself out there, like us, you run the risk of having to hear what people think about you. And for me, go ahead.
I don't care either.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
mean, we obviously don't give a damn. But,
oh yeah, make a fat joke. If I had a friggin' penny for every time someone made a fat joke about me, I'd be a freaking millionaire by now, or hell, a billionaire. I take that back.
You do have great nipples, though.
Well,
I will give you that.
Thank you
but
very much.
you know, you can't put yourself out there if you're going to be at risk of not being able to handle some of the shit that comes out. And I also have to make sure that I am comfortable with myself on a daily basis, because if I don't, man, I mean, even just regular ass people that live in today's, environment online, people are gonna talk shit, man.
They always
We
do.
can't do nothing without people talking shit.
Yeah, because
thankfully I'm pretty good at it. So
yeah, and me, we've had people come after us in the past. I mean, big people too. I mean, hell,
really,
oh, dude, Grade A Under A came after us a long time ago, and called us dogs, called us garbage, called us trash, told us he was going, called us fat, ugly, boring motherfuckers, and it's just like, oh, another fat joke. There you go. And look, again, I didn't engage with him because I knew what would happen. I knew exactly what would happen, and I was just like, you know what? I don't need this in my life. I didn't start this channel to start drama. I didn't start this channel I just started this channel to have fun with my friends.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we're actually branching out and doing other forms of media, it's just like, okay, now I have responsibilities I have to take care of, and I have this and I have that. And the fact that we have people that are contributing to us to put stuff out there, that to me is such a heartwarming thing, because we are under no circumstances telling people they have to do something. We ask out of the goodness of their heart, and they do. And I want to make sure I show appreciation in every way imaginable to the people who are contributing to this. Everyone who subscribes to us, everyone who likes our videos, everyone who comments, everyone out there who is on our Discord, everyone out there who's on our Patreon. I cannot thank them enough, because they have allowed us this platform and this life that we're living right now, or at least me. I mean, Chad here, he's branching out and he's doing other stuff and he's wanting to do more stuff.
Oh, I'm trying to have fun.
Yeah.
I've only got one life to live, so the last thing that I'm going to do is worry about people who literally do nothing to affect it at all. So go ahead and live your life for yourself, man. Don't care what people say about you. I wish I could have had a conversation with her, bro. Because there have been plenty of times where friends of mine
have been near the edge.
And I've been right there with them, and us talking to each other made all the difference in the world, man.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what it was, but there's been a couple of times where it was just like I needed somebody to talk to, and it just so happened that the person that I reached out to needed somebody to talk to at the same time, and either of us could have decided, not to talk to each other,
but you did.
Who knows what would happen? I'm not going to say that it would have been a tragedy or anything, but it was definitely getting over that idea of I will be bothering this person, or just talk to people if you need to, man, because you're not going to be a burden on them. It's okay to do that. There's nothing wrong with saying I need help. Nothing at all wrong with saying I need help.
And that gives whole new meaning to the term pride is a killer, because pride, you can have pride in yourself. Having pride in yourself and pride in how you look and how you take care of yourself, that's one thing. But if you have too much pride to the point of where you're afraid to ask for help, that can lead down a very, very bad road.
It's not, and I don't want anybody to misconstrue anything, because I feel like, the victims of suicide there's a shadow cast on them too. Some people look down
in some ways
on people who do that and stuff. And it's just like, man, you just don't know.
No,
you don't know. Given circumstances change, man, I'm sure that there's been times where I've been so jacked up that could have been the outcome, man. And I just am lucky enough that it didn't happen. And
I told you about the time I tried, right?
No, yeah, I know. But that's another thing that ties into the whole veteran thing. A lot of veterans commit suicide, man. It's a huge problem that doesn't get addressed enough.
Well, it's PTSD.
It's countless different things. You never know what's going on with people, but
yeah, PTSD is the one that everyone talks about, in which, yes, but at the same time, what they do whenever they send you through basic training, Jacob actually talked about this, the madness that they instill in you to turn you into basically a machine.
Oh, well, that's just one of those things, man. It's mental conditioning. It's conditioning in a bunch of different ways. I mean, you're part of a war machine at that point.
Exactly.
It is what it is.
And for people out there who have compassionate ideals, you know, they sign up in the military, you know, because it's what my parents or it's what my dad did, or it's an
There's
easy,
a lot of different reasons.
It's an easy way out financially. You know, all I got to do is
see.
10
I got a
years
problem
in.
with that though. I do have a problem with that. People do say, "Oh, the dumb kid" or whatever. People can't get into college or whatever, so they join the military. There are a
multitude,
trillion different reasons why people would join the military.
Well, yeah.
And it is by far not an easy way out. Boot camp and everything involved with getting into the military, I underestimated how taxing it would be. It's not just the physical thing.
No.
It is every kind of thing to break you down.
When I said easy way out, man, I mean
it's a coined phrase.
Yeah,
man.
Everybody
says that.
underestimates how tough it is.
Yes,
that's what I was saying.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody underestimates how tough it is, and then when they get in there and they serve 2 years, they do 1 tour, 2 tours. Next thing you know, after 2 tours, they're exhausted. They're exhausted mentally from having to learn and cram all this stuff, and plus the physical.
It's a 24-hour a day job.
Yes,
every day,
and
all the time.
And someone who's saying, "Oh, I can do that for 10 years and then retire with half benefits or something like that, or with X benefits." I'm not saying half.
Good luck. All I'm saying is the people that do it and the people that have done it are absolute machines.
Yes,
and I don't mean that in a bad way. They're savages, and they have.
I got some family members who are like that, dude.
Yeah, they're supreme,
Josh.
dude. But I couldn't do it. I'm not about to do it. And
I don't have that mental capacity either, dude.
And those people that come at the end of that road and they're out here in the world trying to live a regular life, man, they've just not lived a regular life for a long time.
Yeah.
And just imagine your days are tripled to what they are now, and then magnify that by 20 years. Like, that's how long it's been for them.
Yeah.
And even shorter than that, or just whatever. Anybody that's been in the military at all, they deserve respect for what they've been through, and I appreciate.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, all of that. But damn.
Well, yeah, we've 1 hour and 6 minutes.
We cut a podcast, man.
Yeah, we did. We cut a little mini podcast down here. Yeah, yeah.
We don't contribute anything to our videos.
Absolutely not.
Nothing.
Dude. Absolutely not. Well. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you've enjoyed. Again, to all of our veterans out there, thank you for serving. Thank you for being guiding lights for us. And also, I guess for everyone else out there, give thanks to your fellow soldiers out there, and your fellow man, and your fellow women too. Everyone who served.
Well, also, if this video and all of our conversation encompasses anything at all, love people, man.
Yes.
Be good to people.
Yes. So, I guess until next time, signing off, I'm Nate.
I'm Chad.
And we'll see you in the next one, everybody. Peace out.